Apparently, through the use of LiDAR, they have discovered that there are enormous structures underneath the Great Pyramid that go kilometers deep into the earth with coils. So enormous pillars, and then these coils. They don't understand what it is because they're just looking at LiDAR images, but whatever this is a uniform structure.
What has just been announced in relation to the pyramids at the Giza plateau and the plateau itself is so incredible, so awe-inspiring and narrative-shattering that I have been sitting here for the last hour trying to wrap my head around the implications of what we were just told.
Vertically aligned cylindrical structures extend for hundreds of meters beneath the Giza plateau. Notably, 8 of these structures, arranged in 2 parallel rows from north to south, descend to a depth of 648 meters, merging into 2 large cubic structures.
You have to think that whoever is guiding such a precise network of pyramids must have been a very advanced culture, probably extraterrestrials.
For centuries, we were told the pyramids were tombs, massive stone tributes to dead kings, built with ropes, ramps, and enough manpower to move mountains. But new data is cracking that narrative wide open. Recent radar scans are revealing enormous structures buried deep below the Giza plateau. Structures with spiral wells, vertical shafts, and engineering no pharaoh ever recorded. These discoveries aren't myths, conspiracies, or blurry photos. They're verified with military-grade satellite tomography. And they may just be the most important archaeological discovery of the 21st century. So what did we find beneath the pyramids? Who built them? And if they weren't tombs, what were they really for? Let's take a closer look. In March of 2024, a group of researchers held a quiet press conference, but what they presented may turn out to be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in decades. Using a new technology called synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, researchers were able to map the interior and subsurface structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza in remarkable detail without ever touching a stone. This method relies on measuring tiny natural vibrations, often generated by seismic activity, and using those movements to reconstruct 3D models of dense stone structures. It's the same principle used by earthquake imaging and underground oil exploration. But in this case, it was applied to one of the most studied and arguably misunderstood monuments on Earth.
This method leverages the analysis of micro movements typically generated by background seismic activity to achieve a high-resolution full 3D tomographic imagery of the pyramid's interior and subsurface components.
The data was then cross-referenced with high-resolution satellite radar images from Capella Space and Umbra, 2 private companies that specialize in synthetic aperture radar. This allowed the team to validate the underground structures with a second independent method, a major step toward ruling out errors or false positives. What they found surprised almost everyone. Directly beneath the Great Pyramid of Khafre, and extending well beyond its foundation, are a series of vertical cylindrical structures, each hundreds of meters deep. 8 of these cylindrical columns are arranged in 2 perfectly parallel rows, aligned north to south. And they aren't natural geological features. They appear hollow inside, surrounded by what the researchers describe as descending spiral pathways.
The 8 cylindrical structures that have been identified in the tomographical image appear as vertical wells, which are hollow inside and surrounded by descending spiral pathways.
At the base of the wells, 648 meters down, sit 2 large cube-shaped structures, each one measuring approximately 80 meters per side. The scale of this is hard to grasp. These are not small chambers. These are massive subterranean blocks that seem to have been carved or constructed with geometric precision.
Merging into 2 large cubic structures measuring approximately 80 meters per side.
This is where the evidence starts to challenge long-held assumptions. The standard story, that the pyramids were built as tombs for pharaohs during Egypt's 4th dynasty, has never included anything like this. No dynastic record mentions these kinds of underground constructions. No tools or inscriptions have been found that suggest how or why they were made. But the data doesn't stop there. The scans didn't just detect structures under Khafre's pyramid. They also revealed underground extensions beneath the pyramids of Khufu and Menkaure, suggesting a much larger subsurface network that runs beneath the entire Giza plateau.
The radar analysis extends beneath the entire Giza plateau, revealing interconnected structures beneath not only the Great Pyramid of Giza, but also those of Khufu and Menkaure. The subsurface network reaches down to a staggering depth of approximately 2 kilometers.
That's over 6,500 feet, more than a mile underground. Now, it's worth noting, all of this is based on radar tomography, not direct excavation. But the quality of the data, its consistency across different imaging angles and providers, makes it hard to ignore. The takeaway is this: there are large, geometrically precise structures beneath the Giza plateau. They are deeper, more extensive, and more deliberately arranged than anything previously discovered in Egypt. And yet, there's no clear explanation for what they were built for, or who built them. No inscriptions, no burial goods, no human remains, and no sign that these structures were meant for the dead. So if not tombs, what were they? Let's take a look at one of the most persistent and surprisingly technical theories, that the Great Pyramid wasn't just a monument, it may have been a machine. One of the most fascinating alternative theories about the Great Pyramid has nothing to do with tombs and everything to do with energy. This idea has been around for decades, first proposed seriously in the 1970s, and later developed in detail by engineer Christopher Dunn. The theory is simple in concept, but extraordinary in implication. What if the Great Pyramid wasn't built to house the dead, but to generate power?
You have a very fascinating hypothesis as to what the pyramid, or theory, as to what the pyramid actually was.
Well, my first book pretty much describes what I thought it was in 1998, which was a power plant. The book is entitled The Giza Power Plant.
Before we dismiss that, let's look at the facts. The Great Pyramid of Giza is not like any other pyramid in Egypt. It's aligned with true north more precisely than most modern buildings. Its base is level within 3/4 of an inch. Each side of the pyramid is nearly the same length, with a margin of error of just 2 inches, despite being over 755 feet long. And it wasn't just built from local limestone. The builders also transported rose granite from hundreds of miles away, granite that's 85% quartz. Quartz has a unique property. When it's compressed or vibrated, it produces an electric charge. It's called the piezoelectric effect, and it's the same principle that powers watches, lighters, and microphones. So now the question becomes, why move hundreds of tons of quartz-rich granite into the upper chambers of a structure, unless it served a specific functional purpose? According to Christopher Dunn's model, the process starts in the subterranean chamber beneath the pyramid. As the groundwater flows through the bedrock, which is still rich with aquifers, it generates vibrations and low-frequency sound waves. Those vibrations travel upward through the structure, entering a series of narrow shafts and chambers, specifically designed to amplify the resonance. Inside the Queen's Chamber, Dunn suggests that a chemical reaction was taking place, using 2 materials, hydrated zinc chloride and hydrochloric acid. These chemicals would react to produce a hydrogen gas, which then flowed upward through the Grand Gallery.
And the process that you think they used in the Great Pyramid involved those shafts?
It involves a lot of things. Yeah, it's not just one single thing. It's a system, not a single thing. So when you look at...
Can we show a photo of that? Do we have a photo of the pyramids and the shafts and where the King's Chamber is?
The Grand Gallery itself, also made of granite, would then resonate with the incoming sound waves from below. The hydrogen gas, surrounded by oscillating stone, becomes energized, and as pressure builds, the piezoelectric granite begins producing an electric charge. If that sounds far-fetched, consider this. In 2018, researchers from ITMO University in Russia published a study in the Journal of Applied Physics that modeled the pyramid's interaction with electromagnetic waves. They found that at certain resonant frequencies, the Great Pyramid amplifies and concentrates electromagnetic energy in its chambers, especially the King's Chamber, and directly beneath its base.
Now, the initial surface of the Great Pyramid is covered in smooth limestone, right? So it's polished and shiny, and apparently it would collect insane amounts of light.
The outer surface of the Great Pyramid mostly is missing, and,
right.
But it has been described as if it was finished, and depending on the polish that it received, yeah, it could reflect a lot of light.
This is important. The effect only occurs at specific frequencies, but it's real, and it mirrors what Dunn theorized decades earlier. The pyramid appears to function like a giant resonator, built from conductive and insulating materials, shaped for acoustic and electromagnetic precision, and aligned with exacting geometry. And then there's this. In 2019, researcher Eric Wilson published a paper describing a large-scale thermal acoustic generator. a modern system that used granite and vibration to produce usable electricity through electron migration. The similarities between this concept and the pyramid model are hard to ignore. So how would the energy be extracted? That's where things get speculative, but it's not without precedent. Both Christopher Dunn and others have pointed to the possibility of a conductive capstone, perhaps made of gold, that could have directed the energy upward into the atmosphere, essentially a wireless energy tower. It's a familiar idea, because one man tried something similar over a century ago, Nikola Tesla.
Explain a waveguide. How does that work?
Yeah, it's like a waveguide is to transmit microwaves, electromagnetic energy, in the microwave region, and it is passed more efficiently through like a tube or waveguide, and that's what they use.
Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, built in 1901, sat atop an aquifer and used subterranean rods to channel energy upward. He hoped to transmit wireless electricity through the Earth's natural resonance. The project was shut down by J.P. Morgan, who realized Tesla's invention would have made most of the industrial economy obsolete, but the parallel is striking. Could the Great Pyramid have functioned in a similar way? A structure built to interact with the Earth's vibration, amplify it, convert it, and potentially transmit it wirelessly? We can't say for certain, but the deeper we look into the design of this monument, the more it starts to resemble engineering, not just architecture. Still, not everyone agrees. Some say there's a simpler explanation, but that raises a different question. If the pyramid wasn't built as a tomb, and wasn't a power plant, then what exactly was it? The debate gets more complex when we step back and realize this isn't an isolated case. Pyramids are everywhere. Let's look at what this might mean. If the Great Pyramid were the only one of its kind, we might chalk it up to a fluke, a unique experiment, or even a cultural outlier. But it's not. In fact, pyramids exist all over the world, and not just in Egypt. That's thousands of pyramids, built by hundreds of different civilizations, often with no known contact between them. They vary in style. The smooth, sloped pyramids of Giza, the step pyramids of Mesoamerica, the terraced ziggurats of Babylon, the circular pyramids in Western India, and yet the patterns repeat. What explains that? Mainstream archaeology usually answers this with what's called convergent architecture, the idea that pyramids are just a logical solution to a basic engineering problem. If you want to build something tall and stable, a pyramid shape makes sense, and that's true, up to a point. But it doesn't explain why so many ancient civilizations encoded astronomical alignments into these structures, or why so many are precisely oriented to cardinal directions, or why some are aligned with star constellations, especially the stars in Orion's belt. In fact, both the Egyptian pyramids at Giza and the temples in Mexico appear to be laid out in a pattern that mirrors Orion's belt. That kind of cross-continental symmetry is hard to ignore. And then there's the question of function. What were these pyramids actually for? In Egypt, the standard explanation is that they were tombs. In Mesoamerica, they're called temples, religious centers often dedicated to sun gods or moon deities. In places like China, the pyramid-shaped mounds are said to be burial sites for emperors. But again, the similarities suggest something more. Many of these structures are located on fault lines or aquifers, oriented to solar and lunar events, built from materials that conduct or insulate energy, and contain interior chambers or passageways that resonate acoustically. That last point is interesting, because if you go inside one of these structures, especially in Egypt or Mexico, you'll often find the acoustics are highly tuned. There are frequencies that bounce, echo, and amplify in ways that seem intentional. So what do we make of it? The theory emerging among a growing number of researchers, even in mainstream academia, is that pyramids may have served multiple purposes. Yes, they were symbolic. Yes, they may have served ritual functions, but they may have also played a role in something more practical, like tracking time, mapping the Earth, or even interacting with natural energy systems. In fact, some researchers go as far as to say that pyramids may have been placed around the planet in specific locations to mark geodetic points, spots of enhanced electromagnetic activity, or energy hotspots. So whether you believe these structures were religious, technological, or something in between, the global pattern is clear. Ancient people all over the world were building pyramids. They were aligning them with the heavens. They were constructing them from special materials, and many of them seem to be built to last, far longer than any building today. Which brings us to one more piece of the puzzle. If these pyramids were designed to preserve information, or to survive something catastrophic, what might they be trying to tell us? That's the next question. One of the most compelling implications of these underground discoveries isn't just the scale or depth. It's what it suggests about who built the pyramids and when. Most Egyptologists date the Great Pyramid of Giza to around 2500 BC, during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. But there's a growing number of researchers who who believe that may not be the full story.
The radar analysis extends beneath the entire Giza plateau, revealing interconnected structures beneath not only the Great Pyramid of Giza, but also those of Khufu and Menkaure. The subsurface network reaches down to a staggering depth of approximately 2 kilometers.
That's not a typical tomb layout. It's a multi-level connected complex, and that raises an obvious question. Why would ancient Egyptians or anyone build something like this and bury it? One theory gaining traction is that the Egyptians may not have been the original builders. Instead, they may have inherited these structures, built by a much older civilization, possibly one that was wiped out long before recorded history. This isn't a fringe idea anymore. Scholars like Graham Hancock and geologist Dr. Robert Schoch have pointed to erosion patterns on the Sphinx and pyramid complex that suggest they were exposed to massive rainfall, something that hasn't occurred in Egypt since thousands of years ago. This aligns with the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which suggests that a global catastrophe, maybe a solar flare or asteroid, ended an advanced culture that existed before recorded history. It sounds speculative, but the astronomical alignments, erosion evidence, and engineering complexity are hard to ignore.
There are enormous structures underneath the Great Pyramid that go kilometers deep into the earth.
And it's not just Egypt. We now know there are pyramids all over the world, in China, Indonesia, Sudan, Peru, Central America. Many of them unexplored, many of them dismissed. If these cultures were building similar structures with similar geometry at the same time, across oceans, the idea of shared global knowledge, or even shared origin, becomes harder to wave away. We don't have all the answers. Maybe it's time to start asking some new questions. At this point in the story, we've seen the scale, the technology, and the mystery. And for many researchers, it starts to feel like something's missing. Because from Peru to Cambodia to Sudan to Central China, we keep seeing the same pattern. Pyramids aligned to the stars, loaded with mathematics, built with methods we can't replicate easily today. Which raises one more big controversial question. Could ancient people have had outside help? It's easy to dismiss that as just TV speculation. But across nearly every ancient civilization, there are stories of knowledge coming from the sky. From gods or beings with wings, light or fire. The Egyptian god Thoth was said to have given mankind the knowledge to build the pyramids. In Hindu tradition, the gods handed down divine architecture. The Mayans and Aztecs described gods descending to give instructions for temples and cities. And the idea of as above, so below, building on earth to match the heavens, shows up everywhere. So maybe the real issue isn't whether aliens built the pyramids. Maybe it's whether ancient people believed they were copying someone else's design. Take the Borobudur Temple in Indonesia. From above, it looks like a cosmic mandala, a message aimed toward the sky. Or the Great Pyramid itself, with shafts pointing directly to Orion's Belt and Sirius, two of the most significant constellations in Egyptian religion. And here's where it gets interesting. Across the globe, the pyramids seem designed to be seen from the sky. Some even reveal hidden geometry or features only when viewed from above, like the concave sides of the Great Pyramid during the equinox. If you believe that ancient people built for the gods, and that those gods were up there, why not build to be seen from above? Is this proof of extraterrestrials? Not really, but it is proof that the story we've been told might be incomplete, and that ancient people were building with knowledge, skill, and purpose that we still don't fully understand. And that's a mystery worth taking seriously. The Great Pyramid might be the most studied ancient structure in the world, and yet we still don't really know why it was built. Was it a tomb, a power plant, a beacon for something above? Maybe one day we'll get a definitive answer. But right now, the truth is, we don't really know. And honestly, that's okay. Because while the pyramids raise questions we can't fully answer, there are truths that have been clearly revealed. Not by radar scans or underground chambers, but by God himself. You see, the Bible doesn't explain the mystery of Giza. It explains the mystery of us. Why we're here, what went wrong, and what we long for. And most importantly, who stepped in to save us. Jesus didn't leave behind a stone monument. He left behind an empty tomb. And through his death and resurrection, he revealed something far more incredible than any ancient structure. That salvation is real, eternity is possible, and that the creator of the universe is not a distant force or a forgotten God. He is a savior who came near. So while the pyramids might hint at lost civilizations and vanished knowledge, the Bible points to a truth even older and far more certain. In him was life, and the life was the light of men.
And let us rest assured that the supremacy of Christ in truth also means the sufficiency of Christ in truth. We preach Jesus and him crucified. And I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, because it is the power of God unto salvation for those who believe, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. This is the supremacy of Christ in truth. In a postmodern, pre-Christian, dying, rotting, decaying, and hurting world. Let us therefore embrace it and proclaim it passionately, confidently, and relentlessly. Because after all, that is why we are here.